I moved into a very old apartment building back in June 2009. Found it through an ad in the paper. Nothing happened at first, but after living there for a short time, weird stuff started happening. First of all, the apartment next to mine was empty for quite a while because the former tenants had trashed it very badly. I would hear noises over there like someone was in there. For example, one day, I was sitting at my computer desk and my cat was sitting next to me. There was this weird cupboard built into the wall with dresser type drawers down below. The other apartment had one exactly like it on the other side of the wall. I all of a sudden heard the drawers on the other side of the wall opening and closing. My cat heard it too, because her head turned towards the sound at the same time mine did. This went on for a while, and I called the property owner to see if he or his wife were over there. Nope, they were out of town that day, and when they got back, they went in there to check on things. Nobody had been in there. The door was locked. I heard weird footsteps and loud pounding out on the enclosed porch when the door was locked. And one time, the timer on the stove had been activated and was going off all by itself. Very creepy place, and I didn't stay there very long at all. I moved in September of 2011. A few weeks ago, I had to have an operation to correct something that had been an ongoing issue with me. When I got home from the hospital, I kept myself in bed most of the first week, occasionally getting up to use the restroom or walk to the kitchen to get a drink. My wife and son did their best to take care of me while recovering, but I had asked if I could sleep alone. As is our norm, that they will all lay in bed with me to watch TV, but I didn't want much movement, and the painkillers the hospital gave me kept me in and out of sleep all day and night. I'm pretty much a wimp when it comes to pills, so a lot of things tend to knock me out. The pills that were described were Norco and 800 milligrams of ibuprofen. I didn't like the way Norco made me feel, so as soon as I could stand it, I got myself off of them and only took ibuprofen. I had the operation the prior week and was home that Saturday. Then sometime around 3 a.m. or so on Sunday, I was alone in my room, half out of it. But there are different lights that make a soft glow in my bedroom, like one being a charger port that makes a soft blue light. Another one is the fan that is on my dresser that also has a soft blue light. Lastly, there's a motion light in the master bathroom that's connected to my bedroom that turns on when it detects movement. I opened my eyes because I saw the light in the bathroom turn on. I was in a daze and thought my wife woke up from the room next door and went to use our bathroom. As I'm looking at the bathroom, I turn my head because there's a boy standing halfway out of my closet. He has his left arm across his chest, like holding up his arm, like trying to hide his face. I'm looking at him, thinking it's my son, but it wasn't. I turned my head back to the bathroom because the light went out and then turned back to the boy, and he was gone. Tuesday morning, I honestly don't know what time it was, but it was still dark outside, but the light was starting to come up. I'm lying on my left side, facing the closet again. Again, the boy is standing there. He looked almost as afraid that I saw him, then he vanished before my eyes. And in his place inside the closet is a rack where my wife keeps her purses, scarves, and other crap. Thursday around 2 a.m, there's a soft glow in my room, but still dark. I turn over from my left side, as that is the side that is most comfortable with my surgery, and try to lie on my back as my left side was going numb from laying on it. As I do, there's an elderly woman standing at the foot of my bed. She's all dressed in black and white hair. I reach to turn on my bedside light, and she's gone. Friday night, I went to sleep early, and I knew my wife and son were downstairs watching TV. On Fridays, it's our custom to let him stay up a little later and watch movies, play board games, or whatever he wants to do. It must have been about 10:30 or 11 p.m. My bedroom door was closed. I could hear the muffled sounds of the TV from downstairs, and this time the boy appeared in the corner of the room, by the bedroom door. He stood there, and it looked like he had a baseball hat that was dark tan colour, and then he disappeared. Maybe it was the painkillers, or maybe it was my imagination, or maybe I had visitors. I don't know what to think. but I didn't at any time feel very scared, just shocked for a bit. I only had one experience like this before due to a medical procedure about 8 years ago. I was admitted to the hospital for a bad infection and I was sedated. And the day after I was in my hospital room and I saw the dead son of my best friend. He was standing at the foot of my hospital bed holding a toothbrush in his hand, smiling at me like as if he was playing with my toothbrush. Growing up, I had several weird experiences in my parents' house in Orange, Virginia. Where we lived was a few miles away from a Civil War battlefield, which may explain some of it, but the entity that lived in my room was an entirely different story. I've seen ghosts before, a UFO, and some other strange things, but this was one of the most constant. My bedroom was the attic, probably close to a 500 square foot room that was oddly shaped and had a stairwell leading downstairs. To the left of the stairwell was the main bedroom area, and to the right was a small and unsettling alcove. The attic was fully furnished and had some small attic doors along the walls. The alcove had a small window, maybe about 3 feet tall and 2 feet wide. To the right of the window was an access door to the attic fan. Underneath was a bookshelf, and to the left was one of those storage doors. Now, to the left was always a little darker lighting-wise, and for no real reason. Even when I had a blacklight glowfish tank there, it was the corner right in front of the door. From my bed on the left side of the room, I could clearly see the alcove, and it was maybe 20 to 30 feet away. Most nights when I went to sleep, I would feel a weighty presence emanating from that corner. When my back was to it, I would feel heavily that something was staring at me. In the shadows, I couldn't make out a figure, but the feel of that gaze would send shivers down my neck and spine, and prickle my skin. It never bothered me much beyond that. I think it liked me better than the previous inhabitant of the room, my older sister. She has told me stories of things being displaced and weird feelings as well. One stands out in my mind. Shortly before she moved out, her best friend came to live with us. My sister had the room set up similar to how I did, except you couldn't see the alcove from her bed. On this particular day, her friend had her suitcases stacked underneath the window. Her and my sister were talking and writing a story, when all of a sudden, bam! Her top, full suitcase was hurled from underneath the window and hit the bed. Mind you, this was 20 to 30 feet away. It's not like it just casually fell. There were some other experiences my sister had that my mom told her not to tell me and my younger brother. My mother always dismissed these claims. Either she was in denial or whatever. It didn't affect her. I kept feeling this particular presence until I finally permanently moved out. My first night in this room, I saw a sort of apparition of it. It looked like a small red fox and came from next to the closet door, which was on the other side of the stairs. The fox didn't come from just anywhere. I saw it appear as if it were walking from that corner. I was young, maybe 13 to 14 at the time, and ran downstairs and told my parents what I saw. They sort of laughed at me at first, then got offended when I suggested it was supernatural. So I kind of told myself I was imagining things and went back up to bed. Never saw the fox afterwards. While I was in college, I would go home sometimes on breaks and feel the presence strongly at night time after I turned the lights out. I remember once I was home alone and was downstairs with the door to my room shut and all the pets in front of me when I heard heavy footsteps coming from right above me, where the alcove would be. My sister had similar experiences, but it was more aggressive with her. The last time I was in that house was when it was going into foreclosure since my mother could no longer afford the payments. I got the rest of my stuff out and took the essentials with me. I was there with 2 friends of mine who were helping me, and for the first time in my whole life, I wasn't there. It had seemingly vanished since no one had been inhabiting the room. I haven't been back since. The presence still haunts my memory, and even now, I can vividly remember the feel of its gaze upon me. Around 3:50 or something in the morning, I was driving my roommates home from their late night shift at work. As we were about to cross over the city line, I saw a very small black and white kitten on the side of the road, and it ran into the bushes on the median. As it's a busy road, I naturally jumped out of the car in an attempt to catch it, to take it home so it could be safe. Now here's where things get weird. As my boyfriend gets out of the car to help me look, the clock strikes 4 a.m. The bushes move and then the kitten is just gone. And on top of all this, it's also a full moon tonight, which just so happens to be a harvest moon as well. Not only did I happen across this black cat in the first place late at night, it was also during the witching hour on the night of a full harvest moon. They say the witching hour is where the veil between the physical and the spiritual is the thinnest. Could I have possibly met a spiritual animal guide that seemingly vanished as soon as the witching hour was complete? I even went back about 10 minutes after we all got home with some canned cat food to see if I could lure it out. I searched for a good 30 minutes and couldn't find anything. As I was about to leave, I felt a sort of spiritual presence in my chest, as if this wasn't the last time I was going to see this kitten or creature or spiritual being. And then another thought came to mind, that maybe it'd actually find me one day. I've attempted to catch many animals before, and I've both succeeded and failed, but I've never had a feeling quite like that one. Could this have possibly been a spiritual guide? In 2019, me, my boyfriend, my best friend and her partner stayed at an Airbnb in Sandusky, Ohio for a convention. There were several red flags about the place, but it was much cheaper than the hotel near the convention hall, so we opted for it. The first red flag happened as soon as we arrived. The owner greeted us and made a point to tell us that his house was directly next door. As in, if there weren't any trees, he would have been able to see into the windows of where we were staying. Okay, so he had a few houses on his property. No big deal, right? Wrong. It only got worse from there. Per instruction, we were forbidden to go into the basement under any circumstances, unless there was a tornado. Being the curious young adults we are, we opened the door anyway, and were going to investigate, but stopped in our tracks as soon as we saw the direction the stairs were facing, directly towards the owner's home. In the darkness, there was a faint electronic glow. We quickly shut the door and barricaded it with luggage. Again, the owner's home was so close, there could have easily been something connecting his house to this basement. A little weirded out at this point, we went and looked at the rest of the house. It was a nice and spacious place with a narrow staircase to the second floor, where our bedrooms would be. We selected our rooms and began to unwind after the long drive. In my boyfriend and I's room, there was a single random sprinkler in the middle of the ceiling that looked out of place. We were tired from the trip, so I didn't think much of it then, but looking back now, there's a high chance it was a hidden camera. Things only got weirder from there. We were gone most of the next day at the convention, and when we returned, one of the outside doors that we definitely locked was unlocked and slightly ajar. My friends and I collectively shared a look of panic and closed and locked the door. My best friend's partner suggested that maybe the owner needed to get something out of there while we were gone, and didn't close the door completely on the way out. We made sure all our things were still there, and then soon forgot about it because we discovered something more pressing. The locks on both the bedroom doors were now ineffective. We told ourselves they were already like that, and we just didn't notice, but I'm not sure if I believe that. On our second to last night, my boyfriend and I were both restless over what had been happening at the Airbnb and the day's activities, so we decided to try to find something to watch on TV to take our minds off it. We were flipping through the channels on the TV when suddenly we came across a Windows 10 lock screen and no computer in sight. I opened the cabinets and tried around to find one. The dresser the TV was on was too heavy to move to look behind, but seeing where the wires were positioned, they could have very well gone through the wall and into the basement. We were too frightened to see the basement for ourselves to confirm or deny our suspicions of surveillance and owner interference, and who knows what else. Needless to say, we left as quickly as possible the last day there, and didn't look back. Once, when I was around 8 or 9 years old, I saw something that I'll never forget. My family and I lived in a house in northern central Virginia, located near multiple Civil War battlefields. This particular morning was one like any other. I didn't have school, and my mom asked me to get the mail for her as she was busy in the kitchen. I walked outside and started descending the porch stairs when I saw someone across the street, standing off to the side. She looked around my age. She had pale skin and curly blonde hair, with thick ringlets on either side of her face. She was wearing a white sundress with a pink ribbon sash across the waist, with a matching bonnet and white slipper shoes. The dress had puffy sleeves and her hands were hidden by the skirt of the dress. I couldn't see her face, as she appeared to be looking down at the ground. I got excited thinking a new friend had moved into the neighborhood. I was going to go introduce myself, but I had just brushed my teeth and thought I had toothpaste around my mouth. I looked down to wipe my mouth, looked up, and she was gone without a trace. I found out later that I'm not the only person who had seen her. Two kids down the street also had seen her in their yard and described her perfectly. I'm 24 now and just found out 2 or 3 weeks ago that my younger brother's friend also saw her one night while driving on our road. He also described her perfectly, the fear and panic in his voice evident. I was about 6 or 7 years old. We were on the school bus going home. We stopped to drop off my best friend as the assistant was undoing the safety clamps on my friend's wheelchair to get her off the bus. There was no loud commotion from the house next door. The commotion came from a very dirty, unkempt, deranged sounding man who suddenly just appeared out of nowhere and started to run at the open-end bus. He had something shiny in his hand and he was ranting insanely. The back was down on the assistant, and the driver were about to just put my friend on the lift in a wheelchair to take her to her front door. The man tried to get on the back of the bus via the lift, but obviously, as the bus was full of young disabled children, the driver and assistant weren't letting that happen. They quickly raised the lift and shut the doors. The man, frustrated by this, went around the sides of the bus and banged loudly on the windows, scaring us very badly. We had to stay locked in the bus until someone called the police. Now, the really creepy thing was, by the time the police arrived, there was no sign of the man at all. It was like he disappeared as fast as he appeared. The police looked for him in and around the house, but they didn't see anything of him. They spoke to the driver and assistant for some time and waited for my friend to be taken to her front door. And until we drove away, we never did find out who the man was, but I can still remember the incident like it was yesterday. When I was 5 or 6, my mum and I lived in my grand's council house with extended family. My great-grandmother passed more than 10 years before I was born, when my mama was quite young. My mama and I shared a large back room, which doubled up as a sitting room and playroom. One night I was sleeping in my bed, facing my toy cupboard, which had no door, but a really pretty sheet which Mama had painted, nailed onto the frame of the cupboard, keeping my toys tidy. I remember suddenly opening my eyes to see a little old lady in the doorway of my toy cupboard. I wasn't scared, as I felt the old lady was familiar and safe. She just appeared to be a regular little old lady with slightly strange clothes. Without moving her mouth, she said, "It's okay, pet. I've just come to see how you are. Go back to sleep." The words sounded clear in my head, and being 5 or 6, I said, "Okay," and went back to sleep. The next day, I was playing in the garden with Mama, and I told her about what said was a dream. Mama, who was very close to her grandmother, looked at me, asking me to describe the little old lady. So I did. Mama looked a little strange and then changed the subject. Years later, we were talking about family with my big cousin Jimmy, who was living with my mama and I at the time. And Mama told me that when I described that little old lady, I actually described our great-grandmother. Jimmy laughed and said when he had the same bedroom, he had seen our great-grandmother also in the same place as I saw her. There were only 3 differences. Jimmy knew our great-grandmother before she passed. It was in the middle of the day when Jimmy saw her, and she just smiled at him without speaking. My mama got out a really old looking family photo, and in the middle of the family members, I knew looking younger sister was the very same kindly looking little old lady. I was 14. My mum and I lived in a typical council estate in West London. It was Saturday morning at around 2:30 a.m., and we were about to go to bed after a night of watching television. Mom turned off the television and went into her bedroom to put something away. I was laying on the sofa with my kitten Katie, but wide awake. I sat up to get ready to get in my wheelchair to go to bed. Suddenly, it was like static in the air, but there was no noise. Nothing, but silence. At this point, I was totally alone in the living room, as Katie had wandered out to the hall. I just happened to glance at the television, and I saw it was glowing with a beautiful white light. And in the center of the television, a really ancient old woman was staring directly at me. Her face ran with lines. Her hair was long and straight, and eyes were filled with so much goodness and wisdom. It was as if she saw right into my soul, and I was bathed with a strong kind of tranquility and calmness I hadn't felt before. This is not to say that I wasn't surprised by the event. I called out to Mum twice, and as suddenly as she came, the beautiful poor light disappeared along with the ancient wise woman. There was static once more, and the screen was black again. My mum came out of her room a few seconds later, not even hearing me seconds before, or noticing my alarm, until I told her what I've just told you. Mum has always been slightly skeptical where the unexplained is concerned. But we come from a family of healers, and she has her fair share of unexplainable events in her own life, so it didn't really faze or surprise her too much. Through all this, I didn't once feel threatened or menaced by the vision of the wise woman, and I've always remembered her with curiosity and interest. In fact, I've sometimes wished she would come to visit me again. My husband works shifts. One morning, around 5 a.m., he had just left our bungalow to walk to the bus stop to catch the first of our two buses to work. Being summer, it was very bright for the time of morning, and he told me he was just collecting his thoughts, thinking about the tasks he had to do that day, and the list of groceries that I asked him to get, when from above and a little way off, he heard a rustling of leaves from a tree behind a wall of a garden. Thinking it was a squirrel, he looked up and he told me he thought he was seeing things. What he said he saw was a small, black-bodied, sleek figure walking or running on four skinny legs resembling a monkey, with a long, rat-like tail. It looked like the head was round with pointed ears either side of it. My husband couldn't see the creature's facial features as it moved with extreme speed. When it hit the ground, it scurried away from him, but he said he swore he saw what he thought was a wing which appeared to be pinned back to the side of the creature's body on the nearest side to him. My husband is a practical, no-nonsense man who was somewhat skeptical about the supernatural and paranormal. He was slightly reluctant to tell me in case I would think he was having me on. We discussed the incident that night when he got home. He had already texted me about it, and I was intrigued. I did ask my husband if it could have been a large bat. On talking about it and thinking it through properly, we concluded it couldn't have been a bat, as this creature that my husband saw had four legs and a rat's tail. We walk that route all the time to get out of the estate and to the shops, before and since the incident, and we've never seen a creature like that. We're both natives to London, and we're unaware of such a creature even existing, so we're still trying to work out what this creature could have been. Over the heath, there was an ancient crumbling waterhouse where the entire estate's water system was managed. It was made with bricks, with a black slate roof and iron doors, and didn't have any doors. The windows were all smashed in by generations of kids throwing rocks and stones at them. It was there when my mama and her siblings were kids and played over the heath, and they all told us it. Spooked them and their mates as it did us. It was a really hot day one summer in the school holidays. The older boys were at home for some reason, and all the younger cousins were being little brats, so the boys said they would take us all blackberry picking to keep us quiet. Mama agreed gratefully. There were 5 younger kids. We were all really excited as blackberry picking was a great family favourite activity, and our Gran's blackberry pies were the best. Gran's house led directly onto the back of the heath. There was a fence with a gap at the end. One of my older cousins passed me through to the other, then lifted my tiny wheelchair over the fence. The other kids were through in seconds, and we were away again. On our way to our destination, the older boys told us spooky stories, as they always did. We all stopped talking when we came to the waterhouse. Nobody ever dared speak around or near the waterhouse, not even the older boys. For something so mundane, it always looked so eerie. There was a second fence to get through before we reached our beloved blackberry field, but this time as we squeezed through the gap of the fence, we were all more somber as we remembered the old wives' tale and urban legend that we all knew about the waterhouse. The story goes, once in the early 1960s, there was a gang of bank robbers. They were local to the area and were really nasty pieces of work. Their expertise was terrorizing bank customers and staff alike before grabbing and shooting anything that moved. They did several jobs without getting caught, but they really messed up a particular job, and a sweet 19-year-old trainee bank clerk was shot dead, and 5 more people seriously injured. One of the gang was also shot dead, along with the nastiest member of the gang being seriously wounded in the crossfire. It's said that the remaining gang members escaped with just a few hundred and made their way over to the heath and hid out in the waterhouse. It was newish at that time and was a perfect hideaway for the murderers. There was a lot of connection and stress between the remaining gang. Months, the bodies of all 3 of remaining gang members were discovered rotting away in the waterhouse 6 months later. A few years later, the weird stuff and creepy noises started occurring, and around the waterhouse. Mysterious hairy figures were glimpsed moving stealthily amongst the pipes and wires. A dank, mouldy, rotten smell like aging river weeds was always smelt around the area of the waterhouse, and eerie wails and menacing murmurs could be heard day and night. In the late 70s, there was a spate of mysterious deaths of homeless people who would shelter over the heath not too far from the waterhouse. There was nothing to ever link the deaths to the waterhouse, but the locals soon started giving the waterhouse and surrounding area a wide berth because of the creepy history and dark reputation. That's what we knew of the waterhouse's dark history. That's why we were so wary and anxious to get away from it as quickly as possible. When we all went through the gap in the fence, further away from the waterhouse, us younger cousins built up enough courage to glance over at the building of ill repute, before being rounded up by the older boys. A put me in my wheelchair again, and we set off to the blackberry field. We soon arrived at the field, where some other local kids knew we're already there, and spent a nice afternoon picking and eating the juicy sweet blackberries, and splashing in the river, and soon the sun was getting low, and it was time for home. Our journey home was much like the one there. We were still bantering, laughing, and the older boys were still winding us up slightly. But being as it was getting later, we were feeling more weary and slightly subdued. When we reached the fence before the waterhouse, the air felt slightly too close. The youngest of the 3 older boys got me out of my wheelchair so that B could lift it over the fence. The other kids were already on the other side of the fence with H and B. A suddenly said to his brother in a low, guarded voice, "Something moved at the back of there, bruv." B just looked at him sideways, but A was straight-faced. A said, "I'm going to have a look," passing me through to B and squeezing past us all. "Wait up, A, we've got to..." Having put me in my wheelchair, B had moved forward towards his brother when we all heard A shriek out in horror and disgust, and the 2 boys moved back quickly. H, having already taken me out of my wheelchair again, had told everyone to run, and we did. B picking up my tiny wheelchair, folding it up while running. A grabbing the other 2 kids' hands and following B and H running with me on his shoulders, holding my other cousin's hand. We ran and ran. A kept saying, "Don't look back, don't look back." I did, but saw nothing. We didn't stop till we got to the fence, which led back to the road on the estate, and we could actually see civilization again. We were all completely exhausted. Before we slipped through the fence to the road, B, holding himself up by the railings, asked, "What did you see?" Yellow eyes, hairy face. All us younger kids began to panic and scream, and H had to calm us all down. H said we were safe and it would be alright, but we all said we wanted to get as far away from the waterhouse as possible. When we got home, we all looked bedraggled and slightly nervous. Mama and my auntie noticed this and asked the boys what was wrong. H just said that we just got spooked by an old drunk man in the bushes looking for golf balls to sell. And as that was quite commonplace over the heath, Mama and my aunt just gave us kids a pep talk and hugged us. We never did tell my mama or my auntie the truth about the yellow eyes and hairy face, or find out what it actually was. But us kids didn't go near the waterhouse for a long time after. I grew up sheltered. I do regret the fact that I didn't go to parties, date, or drink in school. I went off to college without that much life experience, causing me to fall for the first guy that gave me any positive attention. Some showed their true colours very quickly when I refused to sleep with them after knowing them for a day or so. The man I fell for and later married kept his real nature well hidden. I only found out what kind of person he was after our son turned 3. Due to health issues when I became pregnant, I needed to put off finishing college for a year or so. I found myself unable to pay for the remaining years and took any jobs I could manage with my medical issues still lingering. I earned enough to keep us afloat. My husband slowly started to show who he was as the years passed by. I found us unable to pay bills on a regular basis and unsure where the money went. I fooled myself thinking that staying for our son was the best idea, regardless of our problems. I asked a friend to follow my husband, and he found out that our funds were going towards slots and horse betting. I confronted him about it, and we got into a huge blowout. For 6 months I stayed, scared out of my mind over whether we could feed our son or lose the roof over our heads. I never thought I'd become one of those women who stayed with their abusive partner. While you're in that kind of situation, everything feels impossible. I was more afraid to leave than what my husband would do if I stayed. Then he threatened my son, and everything became clear. Overnight, I packed up a few bags and left. Just left. I couldn't even stay with my parents or friends because he knew where they all lived. I didn't want to risk their safety because of my deranged husband's wrath. For a year and 6 months, I made it work. I found a place to stay. I changed my first name and went by my maiden name. I did everything possible to ensure that man could never find us. After no signs of him for so long, I became a little bit lax. I took my son out for ice cream every Friday, and I assume having a routine let him track us down. I don't know how else he did so. You may call me a bad mother for what happened. I left my son, who'd just turned 5, alone in the apartment. I felt safe, knowing I'd only be gone for 10 minutes at the most, and he was asleep when I left. I just wanted to pick up some bread from the corner store for his lunch the next day. I came back and knew right away something was wrong. I knew I locked the front door, but when I came back, I found it unlocked. I flew inside, dropped my bags of food I went to the store to get. I rushed to our shared bedroom, dread growing in my stomach. The room was empty. I nearly fainted. I tore through the entire apartment looking for my boy. I pushed aside the couch and opened every cupboard in the kitchen, my mind in a blind panic. Somehow, through that panicked state, I heard my cell phone ringing. I checked the number to see if maybe my neighbour saw my son try to leave the building and called me saying he was just at their place. I didn't know the number and let the call go to voicemail. I didn't even set the phone down when the same unknown number sent a text. A message a mother never wants to see from an unknown number. I have your son. My sight growing grey around the edges gives me tunnel vision. My hands shook so much I couldn't get my phone unlocked fast enough. The number called again, and this time I picked up. "Troy, I swear to God, if you..." I shout out, voice shaking with fear and anger. "Not Troy, sweetie. Just someone he hired. I needed to get you, but you weren't in, and this is better. Do you want to speak to your kiddo?" A deep voice came from the other end. I've never heard of this person before and didn't have a clue who he may be. I always thought my husband wanted us to gone, but didn't think he would dare spend money that could be used for gambling on something like that. "Yes, let me talk to him." I hated how desperate I sounded. Noises came over the phone as it was handed over. It sounded as if they were in a car with the windows down. My heart sank. They could be anywhere and travelling further and further away. My son's voice barely heard over the noise. "Hey, Mom," my boy started, but I cut him off. "Benny, did he hurt you? Where are you? Are you okay?" Barely kept myself from shouting. My tone didn't go over well with Benny. He was just a child and didn't know what was going on. He didn't even know being in a car with a stranger was a bad thing. "No, this is okay. He's a friend of Dad's," Benny said in a small, quavering voice. I never really told him about his father. I just said we needed to be away for a while. I just couldn't think of any way to explain it. About how I felt about Troy without scarring my child. I knew he missed his dad, but I told him so many times not to go with strangers. This man had been hired by my ex and got coached on what to say to make Benny comfortable and think they really were friends and going to see his dad again. All of this was my fault. I left him alone and I didn't say the right things to protect him. I wanted to cry, but needed to stay strong to make sure he lived through this. "Can you tell me where you are? What car did you get into? What does he look like?" I pleaded, hoping if he answered one of these questions, it would help the police in finding him. The phone was taken away before Benny said anything else. The man came back, and I heard my son sound upset in the background. The phone got muffled like if the man pressed it against himself, as if he didn't want me to hear him sounding almost comforting to the child in the car. He cleared his throat and brought the phone back up. "I have no reason to hurt him. I just need you to get a certain location and time. After that, your son can go free. I'll buy him dinner too." "Is he allergic to anything?" the man asked, his deep voice not matching how friendly he tried to make the last statement. "As if I believe you. What do you really want? Just, please, we'll do the trade now. Bring my little Benny back," I begged, pressing my phone so hard against my ear it hurt. The man didn't answer for seconds that felt like hours. He rolled up the window so his voice came out clear. "Show up on time at the location I'll send you. If you call the cops, you'll never see your son again." The man's voice was so cold, it made my shoulders shake. I opened my mouth to speak, but he hung up. A second later, a text came through with a screenshot of a local park on Google Maps. A part of the trail in the middle of the park was marked, and he provided some photos of the meeting spot. The trail is a bit overgrown and surrounded by trees. I should have called the police. I had the number the kidnapper called from. I didn't record the phone call, but they should believe me it took place. I did consider calling them. The meeting time was set for an hour from now, and after it got dark. I didn't think the cops would believe me so fast and put a plan in motion before the time was up. No, I needed to do the foolish thing and go alone. I called a friend and told her that my husband found where I took my son. I didn't go into details, but told her to call the cops if I didn't send her a message in 2 hours. I debated on telling her to send the police to the park if she didn't hear from me, but decided against it. I would send her a message with the images of the park right before I needed to meet the strange man that took my son. That gave me enough time to get Benny back and hopefully have her call the police for us. If the police arrived at the wrong time, I risked my son's life. I kept looking at my phone while I drove, expecting it to ring. My car wasn't the greatest, and it putted along taking up a decent amount of time to arrive at the park. I got there 10 minutes early and figured it didn't matter. With the messages my friend sent, I raced down the path, trying to see in the dark and find the right spot. The trail was empty, and I didn't see any cars in the parking lot besides an old grey one sitting at an angle. The uneven path nearly caused me to trip a few times, and I cursed myself for wearing sandals instead of better shoes. I saw the meeting spot under one of the rare post lamps. Bugs already buzzed around the light. The sun only set a few minutes ago, but it looked like the dead of the night. I saw two shapes, and my heart raced harder than it ever had before. A man I didn't recognize was sitting on his heels doing what looked to be a magic trick with a coin. Benny, unaware of how dangerous the situation really was, watched on in awe when the man tossed up the coin, caught it, and opened his hand to show it was no longer there. I ran up, scooping Benny into my arms, and took a few steps away from the kidnapper. I wanted to run, but didn't risk it in case someone else was watching us. I looked over at my son, finding him perfectly fine, just a bit scared from my reaction. His face is also a little sticky from soda. I noticed the takeout bag sitting by the lamppost to be tossed away. I fussed over Benny, wanting to sob from missing him so much from the short time apart. The man stood up, and the movement nearly caused me to bolt. I picked up a grey suit jacket off the ground and quickly put it back on. Grey hair matched his jacket along with the eyes. He looked a few years older than myself and a bit scruffy to be wearing a suit jacket and a dress shirt. "Did he hurt you at all, sweetie? Did he?" I couldn't bring myself to ask my son if a stranger touched him in a way that made him uncomfortable. I sort of had that talk with him, but never did it properly. I regretted a great deal of my choices that led to that moment, but never regretted having Benny. He was the only thing in my life I was proud of, and I almost lost him. From the looks of things, Benny wasn't hurt in any way while away from me. The man told the truth of just holding on to him for the hour and buying him dinner. I hated this man. And I hated a monster like him who acted like this good with a kid. "I'm okay. Did I do something bad?" Benny asked in a small voice, looking as if he might cry. "No, honey, I was just scared. Your father's friend didn't tell me he was taking you," I lied. That calmed him down. I took a step backwards, my eye on the man, who stayed silent the entire time. He placed his hands in his pocket, and when I pressed Benny's face against my shoulder to calm him, the man flashed the handle of a gun. He quickly put it away when my son looked back. He didn't want to deal with a loud crying child, so kept his threat silent but clear. The brief look of the gun caused my body to almost shut down. I wanted to get sick. My body shook from stress, and I kept thinking about just making a run for it. I couldn't risk Benny getting hurt. I needed to stay alert and escape when I had a better chance. I also had a small weapon in my purse. Just a stun gun, but I needed to be closer to the man to use it, and I didn't want to put my son down either. "Why did you do all of this?" I asked the man, voice filled with anger. "I told you. Your husband hired me. He should be arriving any minute, so please, let's play the silent game until he gets here." "Listen," I started. He cut off my words by taking a single step closer. Hands still in his pocket, an unsettling grin on his face. For a moment, I thought his teeth appeared too sharp, and the light shone off his eyes in an odd way. I took a few steps back, legs uneven and shaking. My son started to get upset again, and I needed to get him out of here. "Can I at least let Benny leave?" I begged in a soft voice. He paused to consider my request. His face returned to normal, and he took a step away from us to keep calm. Crossing his arms, he shook his head. "It's a dark place, and he's like 10, the man answered. 5, I corrected it. He let out a long sigh and cracked his neck in frustration. "All right, 5. It's not good for him to be walking alone at night. And where would he go?" "Did you have someone who can pick him up?" he offered, his deep voice almost friendly. I stood, stunned. I didn't think the person who took my son would let him go like this. I nodded and made me get out my phone. He watched me type out a message to my friend, asking her to come by and get Benny. When I sent the message, he warned me to keep my phone in my pocket and not to try to call the cops. He said that he only hired me to get me to the park and didn't care what happened to my son. If my friend left her place right after the message was sent, it would take her 30 minutes to get there. He agreed to let Benny leave after she arrived to get him. and not make him walk around to get lost in the park. We had some time, and my ex-husband hadn't shown up, even though it was a few minutes after the meeting time. The man started to pace as we waited. He found some rocks to kick into the grass when he got bored, and I let Benny sit on my lap. I whispered to him how much I loved him and anything else that came to mind. He was confused and scared, which was understandable. He just wanted to see his father again, after so long. I wondered if I should have told him about his father, or let him have a few years of still thinking the man was a decent person. Finally, my ex showed up from down the path. His blonde hair looked like it'd seen better days, face covered in a beard and eyes sunken. He didn't look like the man I married, and Benny didn't even know who he was. The kidnapper let out a growl and dramatically tapped at his waist. "You're late," he hissed at my husband. "I was making some deals. I can give you a little bit extra for staying. Are they both here?" Troy's voice sounded rough, as if he just woke up. I suspected Troy got into something heavier than some drinks and ruined his body since I left. I stood up, sun in my arms again, trying to think a way out of this mess. What would he want? I didn't have any money or life insurance. Our deaths wouldn't benefit anyone. In fact, I told my best friend if I disappeared to call the cops. Troy had something to do with it. If he killed me, all signs pointed to him. It's the principle of the matter, but you're here now. Do you want me to kill her? The grey-haired man said, as if he was asking a mundane question. My legs failed me. I sank to my knees. Benny being strong, but tears came to his eyes. I should have risked running sooner, and now I wouldn't be around to see my son grow up. No. I have some guys who want to pay for her. You can, hit her head, right? Like we do something to make it so she doesn't know what's going on, but keep her alive. Wait, what do people do with an ice pick up their nose? Troy offered, hands shaking, but from withdrawals, not from what he was saying. Like a lobotomy? I don't carry an ice pick around, but I can figure something out. You're the one paying this, her death or not. With a shrug, the hired killer turned and started to walk towards us. I made an attempt to stand, only to have my legs give out again. This couldn't be happening. I refused to let either of them follow through with their plan. I reached into my purse and found the stun gun. I held onto it tightly, waiting for the man to get closer. I wanted to shock him and run like hell, thinking it would be my only chance. Oh, and the boy too. I'll get more for him. With a few steps between us, the man stopped at those words. A dark expression came over his face, only for a second. I thought I imagined it. He forced a smile on his face and brightly looked over his shoulder at my husband, his tone a false cheer. "I told you it's double for kids," he nearly sang, causing my skin to crawl. "I'll pay for it. Just grab them or do whatever you need to do, so we can go fast." I wanted to scream. Like fucking hell, this man was going to touch my son. I already failed him once by leaving Benny alone, and I wasn't going to do it again. I gritted my teeth together, waiting for the right moment. Just before he reached us, I set Benny down and screamed at him to run. My hand holding the stun gun flew out of my purse, and I jammed it in the man's side. I flicked it on and heard the current run, but nothing happened. He didn't flinch or react in any way. I smelled the burned fabric of his shirt, and he still didn't do anything. To my horror, I saw Benny just standing with wet eyes, unable to move. A hand as tight as a steel vice came down on my own and took the stun gun from me. He wrapped one arm around my neck to press my back against his chest, and I screamed, hoping someone would hear. Nothing worked. This man is far too strong for me to get away. "Please, I'll pay you more than what he's offering. My purse, all my cards are in there. You can take anything out of my purse, and... I choked on tears, trying to think of anything else I had to offer to save my son's life. "My body. You can do whatever you want with it. I'll sell it too if I have to save Benny. Just don't hurt." My body was tossed to the ground, and the man held onto my purse strap. Benny came running over, sobbing, seeing his mother mistreated in such a way. With my heart racing, I looked up to see the kidnapper actually looking through my purse. He paused at some lip gloss, as if he was considering taking it. What the fuck are you doing? Just grab them, Troy yelled, his rage boiling over. The stranger put the lip gloss back and found my wallet. He pulled out a small purple cardstock square, and a smile with sharp teeth came to his face. The wallet was returned, and the entire purse tossed at my feet. He held out the card, showing it was a stamp rewards card for a local ice cream place. All the stamps were filled out for a free waffle cone with 2 scoops. I'll take this payment if you don't mind. It was inside your purse, so it counts, he said. I didn't believe his words. He tucked the card away and turned towards Troy. His hands tucked inside his suit pockets and hunched over, but he still looked like a force of nature, walking towards my ex with purpose. Troy screamed at him to finish the job, and the man didn't turn back to us. His anger took over, and Troy pulled out a handgun from his pocket. I screamed and curled around Benny in case one of the bullets reached us. Each shot rang out through the empty park, sounding much louder than I expected from a small handgun. Raising my head, I saw a horrible sight. A bullet tore through the grey-haired man's ear. Blood spattered on the ground, and Benny went into a sobbing fit. Instead of crying out in pain, the man started to laugh. He doubled over like he couldn't breathe from laughing so hard. In a blink of an eye, he went from laughing a few steps away from Troy to knocking him to the ground. His scuffled dress shoe on Troy's chest, pinning him down. I didn't even see this man move. Troy's hands flew to the man's leg, trying to move it as he shouted and cursed. All his attempts to get free failed. 10 grand, I'll pay you 10 grand. She can't give you that. Don't they call you a mad dog? The kid shouldn't matter. Troy screamed, as if he hadn't just shot the man now standing on his chest. That money is what you think you're going to win off a bet tomorrow. You currently do not have the payment, and this lovely woman over there paid me in advance. Unlike you, she didn't promise me what she doesn't have. So I'm taking a job from her. After all, I haven't gotten a cent from you, and I do believe you were just going to kill me instead of actually ever handing over any money. That sounded like Troy. I honestly never expected him to find me because that would require him to pay a private investigator or to spend a good chunk of his own time tracking us down. I wasn't worth anything to that man until he found out he could sell his ex-wife and son to God knows who. Troy started to sputter out excuses, but the man pushed his foot down harder to cause him to start wheezing. He leaned over, his chest pressed against his knee to watch Troy's suffering face closer. When he turned his head to let our eyes meet, my body turned to ice. A pinprick of white light came from his pupils, and somehow his ear wounds started to close. This man wasn't human, and I didn't have any clue what he really was. I don't get paid to hurt people. I only kill them, but someone has to tell me to do it. So little lady, you've already paid. Do you want me to go through with the job? His smile got wider and teeth sharper. His face appeared more of a beast than a man's. I looked at the monster and the man I married. I realized then they were both monsters in their own way. I nodded my head, and that was enough. The deal was silently made. I didn't want my child to see what was going to happen. I stood up, ready to make a run for it and leave these two behind. Off in the woods, I saw some more lights from the eyes. Countless of them appeared in the dark. Out from a bush came a shape that made me gasp. A rotten bear with shining white eyes took one step into the clearing. The fur sagging off the thin frame and half the skull exposed. Such a creature should not be able to move around. I questioned my sanity at that moment. I turned to leave, but saw the man move his leg. He kicked Troy hard enough for me to hear ribs break and see his body fly a few feet towards the dead bear. A fun fact about bears is they just start eating you. You'll be lucky if you bleed out quickly from the attack. I heard the man shout with another wheezing laugh. My legs finally worked and I ran for our lives. I met my friend at the start of the park, her face with clear worry. I forced her inside a car and told her to drive. I could pick up my car later. I refused to tell her what happened besides my husband finding us, but won't be an issue any longer. She thought I killed him, but was a saint. She let us stay at her place for the night. My poor Benny is crying late into the night. I hope this happened to him young enough that the memories of the night faded in time. I called out of work for the first time the next day. I expected the police to come knocking at our door, but nothing happened. I hated leaving Benny with my friends so soon after everything that happened, but I needed to make sure of something. I told her I just wanted to pick up my car. I got on a bus to head to the park, only staying long enough to grab my car. But I drove down to the pier and found a spot to park. I looked around trying to find a certain person, knowing my stamp card expired tomorrow, so we had to be there today. By some miracle, I spotted the man with the grey suit jacket leaning against the wooden railing and looking out into the water. The grey clouds of the day matched his hair. He had a waffle cone in his hand and a brown paper bag in the other. The cone almost finished, with a few drops of bright blue ice cream on the side. I walked up to him, but stopped behind, unsure of what to say. He somehow sensed I arrived. Turning, he tossed the bag at me, which I thankfully caught. Your stun gun is in there. Oh, and about 60 grand in cash your husband won from his horse race today. I picked it up for you, he said in a calm voice and a shrug. What? I choked on my words, holding the heavy bag. I pressed it against my chest, feeling what must be a stack of bills inside. I shook my head, not believing he would simply hand this much money over. Why wouldn't you keep this? I never would have known about it, I questioned, and noticed people staring at us. I stepped closer to keep our conversation between ourselves. What kind of person would hand over a life-changing amount of money and kill a man for an ice cream cone? Not a person, I told myself. He wasn't human. Some sort of monster I never wanted to see again. I just wanted to know if Troy was dead or not. I don't need it. And a dead man doesn't either. And I think you earned this after being married to someone like that. Either way, I did my job. You still owe me a little bit though, he said, and finished off his cone with one big bite. I let him chew and wondered what he was talking about. If he didn't want money, then what? I thought back, trying to remember what I'd offered in such a state of panic. My words came back, and my stomach fell to the ground. You want me to... I asked, my mouth dry, and the words dying in my throat. You offered. You said I could do whatever I wanted with your body. We can get this done right here, he said, and his face turned into a smirk I wanted to slap. Here? You crazy? I hissed. I did offer my body, but that didn't mean I wanted to get arrested for bubbling indecency. He raised one hand and with his index finger tapped his right cheek until I got the hint. My face turned red, and I held the bag closer, threatening to rip it. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. I got closer and kissed his cheek, face still red and anger simmering in my stomach. This bastard just wanted to tease me. Is that all you wanted me to do? I asked clearly. He got closer. His lips necked my ear, causing my body to tense up. His hand went to the bottom of my back and only touched the space with his fingertips. I smelled cigarette smoke on him, covering up an earthy, almost sweet smell. Did you want me to ask for more? He offered in a low voice. I jerked away, hating him as much as I hated the reaction my body had to his words. This man wasn't human, and I now killed my ex, and yet I shook for mixed signals. My face red and teeth clenched together, I shook my head, unable to speak. He laughed a harsh, wheezing chuckle, and I knew why he left it with just a kiss on the cheek. The soft moment and the suggestion afterwards made me question myself. For the rest of my life, I would curse what I felt for half a second, wondering if he pushed hard enough. I might go along with what he asked. Unable to help myself, I punched his arm. That caused him to laugh harder. Let's hope we never meet again. You need better taste in men, the man mocked and started to walk away. I really do, I admitted. I let the stranger leave, glad to not get his real name or know anything else about him. As the months passed by, I waited for the police to show up, and they never did. No one came questioning me about Troy going missing, and nobody was ever found. If it wasn't for the cash I hid away, I would have thought the whole thing didn't happen. Benny blocked out the night, but he started to have nightmares for a few months afterwards. That man we came across, whatever he was, just wanted to amuse himself. He didn't care about my life or Benny. He just kept me alive to tease me afterwards. Simple as that. Or he turned on Troy because he insulted him. Either way, I was thankful his odd personality let us live through the night. I hated Troy, I really did. But if I had the option of going back and never marrying him, knowing how it would turn out, I still wanted to go through with it. I have my son, who I love more than anything. The past 5 years of bad memories are well worth having him around every day.